This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Hello, hey, hi! It is Party Loaded time. Welcome one and all to the podcast for this week. It is Wednesday night, the 30th of January. We're closing out the first month of the year in style with all of the guys here tonight. Well, most of the guys here, some of the guys here tonight. My name's Luke Ritalik. We've got Mr. Matt Gamedev.world joining us. Welcome back, Matt. What's going on?
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Hello, hello. We've got Christian Paulson Brown, CPB. Welcome back.
I am here. Hello, it is me.
You are, all right. And it is the three of us tonight to dig into everything great in the world of video games, of which this week has been an eventful one. It's been fun watching some weird stuff happening in this first part of the year of 2019. Yeah. My goodness, yeah. So, I think all of us have had reasonably interesting weeks. Matt, you in particular got to do some fun stuff sort of on the weekend, so I kind of want to throw to you first tonight and kick off with a little tale of an event called Game Jam 2019. What's been going on with the Game Jam? Yeah.
Basically, I spent my weekend suffering. That's about
it. What's Game Jam for the uninitiated? Because I know we've mentioned it a few times on the podcast before, but never when you've been here, I don't think. So, yeah.
So the Global Game Jam is a worldwide event, basically, where a whole bunch of different sites around the world are organized. With the intention that a whole bunch of game developers get together in one place and they all work on games over the course of 48 hours based upon a theme that gets set at the very start. So you typically turn up on Friday in the evening and work through until Sunday in the evening, and you get the announcement as to what the theme is. So this year's theme for the Global Game Jam was What Home Means to You. And basically you make a game around that theme, and it can be whatever you want. Like it's not strict or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's other game jams like Ludum Dare, where sometimes the theme for Ludum Dare will be something like, here's a game asset you have to use in your game.
Oh.
And that can like really change like how you build stuff.
Like an Iron Chef version of Game Jam kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that. Like Ludum Dare is really interesting because you never know what to expect there. Like it could be a word, or it could end up being an asset or an audio file. Like, yeah, there's a variety of different ways that can go down. But Global Game Jam is a bit more open, and so with a theme this year, we ended out with just there's always really wacky games. I think the best games that go into Game Jam and come out of it are the games where people decide to just do something completely bizarre and funny and purposefully shit. Usually is what ends up being really, really good. Is when people allow themselves the time to rest and relax. I ended up doing something a bit more touchy-feely. So I made a game about making friends with people all over the world, because we're all digitally connected and everything now, and what that means for where your home is. Because for me, home is kind of on the internet, I guess.
Yeah.
There was somebody else that did a game where here in Perth, I can't remember the name of it, but it was really, really funny. Where he was kind of inspired by the fact that he's basically been living out of a suitcase for the last couple of months. And so he made a game where you played a sentient suitcase with creepy hands kind of coming out of it, and you had to go and collect all your stuff to put away in yourself. And the more stuff you put away, the bigger you got. So you kind of started out as a wallet and would gradually grow into this very creepy suitcase with bizarre leg and hand arm. It was really strange.
Conceptually, that sounds a little bit like Donut County in a way.
It also sounds like Spore, but it's like instead of Spore, it's Paw.
There was a bunch of really, really funny games there this year that what home means to you as a theme. People were just basically making games where it's like, yep, it takes place in a house.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going with this. That's my excuse. And then just the Perth game dev community. I really like how bogan game development it really is. Like, there's this real genuine like bizarre twist on Perth games quite often. Yeah, there's some that were shown that were just ridiculous, but as a little drop, this will probably be good for the news topics area, but I'm going to drop it now. On the 22nd of February, all the Game Jam games that were made here in Perth are going to be shown off at the Nostalgia Box in Perth.
Oh, nice.
So if you actually want to see what people worked on, basically a lot of those developers will be tweaking and polishing their game from the Global Game Jam to show off at the Nostalgia Box. Yeah.
That's super cool. You know, this is just a sort of aside, but related to something that we know is coming out later this year. You know what I'd actually love to get going when it fully releases? Is to actually coordinate some sort of Dream Jam, like when Dreams comes out on PlayStation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and do like an event dedicated to people like over the course of a weekend just making games in that thing. Just as like a creative kind of, collaboration event. That would be super cool.
That sounds like something that Media Molecule would even like run themselves.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do that sort of thing all the time. You know, like, hey, we're gonna give you a theme this weekend, and you can make a game inside of Dreams or make an asset inside of Dreams.
Yeah. So, Matt, how do you feel that the indie sort of community sort of works under the framework of Game Jam these days in this hyper aware of the impacts of crunch kind of environment that we inhabit now? How does that play out?
I mean, for myself, like, I was posting up on Twitter beforehand where I'm like, look, this is my plan for Game Jam. I'm getting 8 hours of sleep every night. And basically, if I factor in breaks and such, that basically means of the 48 hours I've got, I can work 26. And so I should scope my game appropriately to that. And that's still crunch. Like, you know, working 26 hours out of 48 is a lot of time. So you wouldn't want to be doing that constantly. But I think that a lot of people are a lot more aware now. Certainly for me, like, I didn't actually spend a lot of time on the Game Jam site itself. I was out with friends all day on the Sunday. I probably did put in closer to 26 hours by the end of it. And I managed to get my sleep and everything. A lot of people will sleep at the Jam site. So the Jam site for Perth was in Northbridge at SAE. So you would end up with a lot of people that, you know, bought air mattresses or were curled up on the floor with just, you know, their backpack as a pillow. Or like, it's really, really important during those events to take care of yourselves. But I think that a big thing is that a lot of indies will talk the talk, but not walk the walk when it comes to, you know, self-care and that sort of thing. Game Jam, though, you're surrounded by a lot of other people that are going to want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So I think that it's like that people are getting better at, but I certainly wouldn't say, you know, even though we're all hyper aware of the fact that we shouldn't be crunching and we should be taking care of ourselves, it still happens over the Game Jam.
Yeah, absolutely. I would imagine when you're sort of, you know, doing it as a creative, fun thing, it feels almost like playing a game to some people. And while some of us would be happy to, you know, stay up and play a game till 4 a.m, it's, you know, obviously not the best thing for our personal health and well-being. So,
like, I would not call myself a very good programmer by any measure, but the moment that I sit down and start programming, it's you know, there's usually really substantial gaps between when I was programming now and when I was last programming. And it's really, really interesting how it feels, because when you first start doing it again, you're having to pick up Google all the time, trying to remind yourself, how the hell does this thing work? But then within like the first 3 hours of Game Jam, like, you're very rarely doing that, and suddenly you're punching out code, and it feels incredibly good, and it's very easy to lose track of time. What the first day I was streaming and I was trying out project management technique called Pomodoro. I think that's how you pronounce it. Which is basically this idea of you work for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break, and you do that 4 times before taking a 30-minute break. And it's supposed to make it so that you take bite-sized chunks out of a project, rather than going and saying, well, I better get all the character movement done, which is more like a 6-hour task or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting, and I think that it's a good opportunity for people to try strategies around how do I scope a game and how do I take care of myself while I'm making a thing. That a lot of people don't actually see the opportunity there to do that, or they're just super focused on I have to make the best game jam game ever, because if I do a really good job, I could end out taking this thing all the way and then going and releasing it and making money, and that's just not, that's like basically saying I'm going to go to the casino for the next 48 hours, and if I get really lucky, I'll leave a millionaire.
Yeah, no, not likely to happen. Oh, that's awesome. That sounds really cool. So event related, I might just sort of drop in with an event that I attended over the weekend as well. So I got to go and check out the Perth leg of the live show of Achievement Hunter on tour. So Rooster Teeth's Achievement Hunter, so all of the crew from that long-running sort of series of content creators do a whole bunch of stuff across a whole range of different games. Very, very well known, amongst the YouTube sort of community. Very, very funny people. They sort of came and they were doing live shows in Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. Especially remarkable for us because nobody ever comes to Perth. It's just like, it was super fortunate that they actually decided to come over here. So, the Perth Concert Hall headed down and got to see them. I was joined, of course, by Ollie and Mimo and Jam. Jam managed to pull herself out of her deathbed just long enough to attend, which was good. So I say deathbed, she's getting better, she's fine. But yeah, no, it was a good fun night. So they did a bit of a mixed sort of stage show of like a few different sort of comedy skits and a bit of musical acts and showing off some videos of content that's coming up and that kind of thing. But there were some really, really interesting takes on games that they played on stage. One in particular they actually opened the show with, which I thought was the coolest thing ever, is there was 7 of them, right? And so they played a game of Overcooked 2 on stage. Now, you might think, okay, Overcooked is a 4-player game, so how did they actually work that? So 4 of them played Overcooked in the middle of the stage, while the other 3 of them actually tried to do live Overcooked using real food on either side of them.
Oh, God.
So they were basically throwing squares of cheese around and bread and whole lettuces and chopping tomatoes and throwing those over the other side of the stage. It was freaking hilarious. So I don't know if there's video of it up anywhere. I suspect there may not be, but if there is any around, I'll link it somewhere. Holy crap, it was funny. So it was worth checking out. But those guys are super hilarious. They had a couple of members of the team that weren't able to make it over because they were having kids. Damn them, that's real life stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend checking it out if you get a chance. Achievement Hunter, quite funny. Jeff Ramsey, who's one of the original founders of Rooster Teeth, is a member of the team. He actually did some stand-up comedy because he's been sort of practicing that a bit lately. And I think they actually did like a Rooster Teeth documentary a short time ago about Jeff sort of treading into the world of stand-up for the first time, sort of a bit of an exploratory expose on what that's actually like, sort of coming in from the ground up. So that was super cool to check out as well. So yeah, good fun night. I enjoyed it thoroughly. So now I see that you guys kind of kicked into something that we talked lightly about in previous weeks, but you've finally popped the cork on now. So is Assassin's Creed Odyssey happening? Do I need to go and get this game now? Because we kind of agreed that we'd all play it. So what's going on?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
How much did you play, Matt?
Let me have a look here. 95 minutes is what it says on my Steam.
Okay.
I haven't put in a lot of time just yet, but I've put in enough to get a good feel for it. So, like, not enough to be like, this is the best game ever, obviously, but enough to go and say, hey, the movement mechanics feel very not Assassin's Creed.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like it's very similar, but holy shit, like, I feel more like Spider-Man than I do an assassin. It's ridiculous. Like, there's a wall. I can just walk up there. It's like, you know how in the Tomb Raider games or Uncharted, it's like, okay, well, I can see that wall is climbable because there's all this like bird shit on all these cracks up there. So clearly I can climb that, right?
I've always seen the white spots, but I've never equated that with bird shit. I'm never going to be able to not do that now.
No, it totally is.
It's
in the old
totally
Assassin's Creed
bird
games,
shit.
it literally was that there would be birds on the edge of the building and you'd shoo them away. And yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But here it's literally like the number of times I've gone running through a room and forgotten that I was holding down the climb up walls button and then accidentally just like gently brushed a wall and ended up climbing up it. I'm like, that didn't have any handholds. How the hell did I do that? It's actually really impressive, and it's a lot of fun. It feels like you can get around a lot more. And it's Assassin's Creed the RPG. It's not like the action. It's still got the action hack and slash mechanics, but it's much more like an RPG now. It's really interesting just how different it feels, but also similar enough. Yeah, it's interesting. What do you think, Christian?
See, I hardly played any of it. So I got Assassin's Creed Odyssey as a Christmas present, and I've been kind of mentally forcing myself to play it to make the person happy who got me the game. But even though, like, because I loved Assassin's Creed Origins so much, but I feel like I haven't had enough breathing room between Origins and Odyssey. So I think Odyssey is going to be a fantastic game, and from the little bit I played of it, it feels just as good as Origins, and better in the actual the combat department. Like the actual fighting seems like it's a bit quicker, a bit snappy, a bit more responsive. But most of the systems, like the RPG systems and the parkour systems, that's the same as the kind of changes that were made for Origins. And so I just don't have the fire in me to sink my teeth into another Assassin's Creed game yet. So I will, but I need more room. I need more breathing space before I play it more.
Like, quite honestly, I very nearly didn't start it up, and I'm still flip-flopping because I am enjoying it, but at the same time, it is an RPG basically. And I know that I have Divinity Original Sin 2 sitting there, and they had released the Definitive Edition, which changes a shit ton of stuff. So it means I'd have to start that over. So I actually was sitting in character creation going, do I play this or do I play Assassin's Creed?
Is that a free update for people who own the game, Matt, or is that a separate purchase? Ooh.
It is a free update for everyone that owns it. Like, basically, it was to coincide with the console release. Like, they released the Definitive Edition on consoles, and the PC version got the Definitive Edition for free. And it changes a lot of stuff.
Oh, well, screw me sideways. That's back on my list then.
Literally, you start it up, and like I've been through the starting area of Divinity so many times now, but you start it up, and it's like, this isn't the ship I know. It's super interesting, but yeah, like I'm probably going to end up playing all the way through Assassin's Creed Origins Odyssey before I go and play Divinity 2, because I've already restarted that so many times.
Yeah, you know what to expect. Well, all right, I didn't kick into any Assassin's Creed, but I did have something that I, let's say, experienced on the weekend, which I'd like to talk about for a little bit. So the EA Anthem VIP demo kicked off last weekend, and what a demo that was! Did you guys follow any of the media over the weekend about how that went down?
Just a bit.
Cool.
Yeah. Just a bit.
Cool. All right. So let's say that my opinion on the game is trepidatious at best following that weekend. So, all right, my general experience was that they opened up the VIP demo to people who had pre-ordered the game, basically. So, like, I decided, like, I don't generally pre-order games, but I knew that I was going to be playing this one, so it wasn't a huge risk for me. You know, even if it gets shit reviews, I'm still going to pick it up because I still want to know. So I picked up the pre-order. I downloaded the demo client, which is a separate thing you download off Origin, and loaded in. Loading in took quite a while, as you'd expect, when the servers are getting smashed, so that wasn't a huge surprise. But then when it actually came to sort of loading into the game, like after it had connected to a server, not a lot was happening. So I spent a good hour actually trying to crack that barrier and get into the game to begin with, which, you know, wasn't super great. And this is after about a day of the demo had passed, so it was a 3-day thing. So, you know, I gave it a day to sort of wait until they'd, you know, some of the traffic had died down a little bit and they'd worked out some of the initial kinks, and, you know, hopefully things aren't as much of a trash fire by that time. Still not great. Eventually managed to load into the game. So what I did get to experience is running around the home sort of hub area, which is called Fort Tarsus. Now, the hub, as I understand it, I think they're actually going to be adding another social hub to the game, which may or may not be connected to this geographically. But Fort Tarsus appears to be where a lot of the story events of the game sort of take place. You sort of, it's like the Tower in Destiny in a way. So you interact with a lot of the NPCs there. You know, you actually load into your javelin suit there and sort of go off on missions. And it's obviously an area that they've put a fair bit of time and effort into crafting the visuals for, because it did look quite good. You know, some of the nicest areas that you've seen in a BioWare game, essentially. So running around would have been great, but unfortunately, one of the things that I noticed about this area first and foremost is that you can't run. So the game itself is supposed to be third person. When you load into this hub area, you're actually placed in first person, which was interesting to begin with. I've read a little bit of detail on this after the fact, and it seems that, like, Casey Hudson from BioWare was saying that the reason why they chose to do that was because they wanted you to feel less like your superhero version in the suit, and when you're in the sort of hub area, and more like a human, like the rest of them, as you're wandering around. So the change of perspective was meant to sort of force that. Which I kind of understand to an extent, but it's a weird feeling when you get in there. But coupled with the fact that there was no sort of speedy movement, it felt like you were wading around in molasses. It was really bad. So it detracted from a lot of the visual spectacle by the fact that you felt like you were just wading around at a super slow speed. It was not a good feeling at all. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I have heard after the fact that apparently they are looking at introducing a run option in that area, which I think will be a godsend, because at the moment it's real bad. So interacted with a few of the characters there. That seemed interestingly enough. They were a little bland in parts. There was a lot of areas that were locked off from the demo, which you couldn't access, which is, fair enough. Then I jumped in the suit and attempted to load into a mission. Now, what happens is you load into the Javelin suit, and then it brings up like a map screen, which has points of interest that you can sort of load missions from. But the way that the menu for this is organized is so ass backwards. It's just ridiculous. So you can see the different activities in a list, and you can click on them, and then it basically shows the map screen where you can see the points of interest. You click on a point of interest and then nothing happens. You can't actually load into it. It doesn't load any more information. You can only get into the mission or the activity associated with that point of interest by hitting back on the menu again and going into a separate screen where you actually load into the mission. It's dumb. So
what the hell?
Yeah, I don't understand it at all. It's the most non-intuitive sort of menu layout I've seen in a long time. It's ridiculous. But then when I attempted to load into either the free play, which is just sort of wandering around, or actually load into one of the missions proper, I got hit by one of the things that they've described as an issue that they had over the weekend, which they've referred to as the infinite load issue. So what I take that to mean is that a lot of people were sort of jumping in and finding that their loading screen was hitting about 90% full on the bar and then just spinning and not actually letting you into the activity. A bunch of people tried sort of shutting the game down and loading back up, and some of them were successful at actually breaking that barrier on various different consoles and getting in. But throughout the entire weekend, I couldn't. So I couldn't actually load into any of the combat, any of the missions, any of the action which actually involved jumping around in the Javelin itself. So I have no idea how the game actually plays at this point. I've only experienced like the main sort of narrative hub and the menu screens, both of which severely unimpressed me. So, but I mean, when I first saw them mention some of the issues that they were facing on the weekend, like this loading thing, I thought initially it must have been due to server traffic, but apparently no, it was an actual game bug. So, but when they listed it as infinite load, the infinite load bug, I read that and I immediately pictured a dude spreading his cheeks on a toilet and just letting a never-ending stream of shit come out, because that's exactly equating to the experience that I felt. So, oh man, it was bad.
I lived my Anthem VIP demo through a friend, who actually did get into the game, and she was telling me that the map is tiny. Like
the map for the demo is
it's like it's super tiny, and like the concern is this the whole world? Like how much of this do we actually get beyond this? But she was also saying that it suffers from a problem that Destiny was smart enough to avoid, because you can't randomly matchmake people in a raid. They have a lot of puzzles, apparently, in the game that requires players to cooperate by pressing buttons and such. And she was saying that she was in a mission where other players were just trolling. Like, all they had to do was just match 3 colors to open up a door, and other players were just constantly shooting them to change the colors. So they could never progress. And it's like, that's awful design. And it's she hadn't even told me about the walking around in Tarsus. Like Like, I'm just imagining Mass Effect and being forced to walk around the Normandy without being able to sprint everywhere. And it's just so silly.
It's like that, actually. Yeah, that's a good comparison. Actually, speaking of comparisons, it seems like a lot of people are sort of comparing this game to Destiny, which I think it's only fair from the live game aspect of it, like the game as a service aspect. When it comes to actual gameplay, I think a much fairer comparison is actually pitching this game against Warframe, because the main sort of game is played in third person as opposed to first, and you only are in first person when you're in the hub area. So... And honestly, unless I see something pretty remarkable during the second open beta this weekend, Warframe's going to shit all over this without even trying. I can tell you that straight away.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Warframe recently had a dev stream, and live on the dev stream, they had a whiteboard, and it was their plan for 2019 for Warframe. And the guy just wrote the first item, change Warframe name to Javelins. But then he erased it, and it was just a joke. But like. I think that everyone knows that though the two games do have a lot in common.
Yeah,
it's funny.
I mean, in the case of Destiny and Warframe, those games have both had the benefit of, in Destiny's case, an entire prequel, that they've built and learnt from and had a lot of testing and time to add to. Warframe's been out for quite a while now as well.
7 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, those games are extremely content rich and had, a lot of chance to learn from their trial and error. Anthem's going to be coming out fresh, and it's going to have a whole bunch of, fresh issues. And, in terms of content, it won't be anywhere near as built out as those other two games. So if anyone is thinking that because it's EA and because it's BioWare that they're going to be getting something that's, superior to those other games, you got to temper your expectations. I think that's an insane thing to think is even possible.
Like, my major concern from the start was the fact that BioWare make single-player RPGs. They don't make online action shooter things. And Bungie already had done online action shooter things in past with all Halo games. So, of course, my expectations were pretty good that Destiny was going to be good. But Anthem is not a BioWare typical game. So, and it sounds like from all the design issues that I've been hearing, and they're fundamental design issues as well. Like, it's not, this is something where it's an excusable mistake. It's like they made the decision to make it this way. The fact that they've done that really, really worries me, because it does kind of show that they're out of their depth. Yeah. And that's scary.
Yep. So I don't know. We'll find out more after this coming weekend. Hopefully they've fixed some of the bugs. As I said on Twitter, hopefully they fixed the most important one, which is actually being able to play. So
yeah,
it seems important. But yeah, I mean, thankfully I did play something else during the week that was a hell of a lot of fun and was just as good as I expected, and that is actually digging proper into the Resident Evil 2 remake. So I'm not going to mention much of the stuff that I sort of did when I talked about the one-shot demo, because it's just as good as that is, and then some. This game is a freaking masterpiece. If you ever want to look at an example of how to remake a game, this is it. Like, between this and perhaps Shadow of the Colossus, I think that, these are perfect examples of how to give something that deserves it, like the love and attention, to really bring it back into, the public, front mindset again. Because Resident Evil 2 originally was a huge game at the time, was a really, really fun game, massively enjoyable, revolutionary for what it was. This is just bringing back all of the memories of why that was and just, polishing it up to a sheen. It is such a great experience. The visuals are fantastic. The gameplay is great. The, the video, the audio, the facial animations, the narrative beats. They've added a lot of sort of tender loving care as well to really kind of make it more of a 2019 game as opposed to a 1999 game, I think. We're talking like 20 years or 98, I forget. But man, I cannot recommend this game enough. I think this will be one that pops up quite a bit at the end of the year in some of the Game of the Year discussions already, I can see. So it is of that quality. So yeah, man. And Mr. X is as terrifying and intimidating as I remember. And then some. So yeah.
It's good when he starts creating memes. Like, that's good.
Seen some choice Mr. X memes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's been good. Well, a lot of people have been talking about, what Capcom are going to do next with the Resident Evil franchise, whether it would be a good idea for them to move on with doing like a Res Evil 8 or another remake, like remaking, Nemesis. I think that they could probably do either at this point. I would love to see them do another remake like this. But, probably take quite a bit of time. But I don't think the Resident Evil franchise is going away anytime soon. Like, they've had a couple of really big successes in recent times now. They're not going to let this go away, for a long time given how things have gone. So
I've heard like the smallest little silly conclusion that they are making Resident Evil 3 remake because data miners have there's out of bounds areas in RE2 remake that are inaccessible but are fully rendered, and they're areas that are in Resident Evil 3.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, so the people say, well, they've gone to the effort of fully rendering these inaccessible areas. Maybe they're sort of laying groundwork for number 3 already. So
okay, that could make sense because there was a big part of that took place in the police station as well, wasn't it? If I remember correctly.
Mostly on the outside. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'd be all for it. Sounds good. I mean, in the meantime, we're going to get a Netflix series as well, apparently. So let's see how that turns out. Could be anything. Yeah. But I don't know. I would like to see a different take on Resident Evil than what the Mila Jovovich movies were, which just got a bit weird and wacky. And yeah. I mean, they weren't all terrible.
We've got the Mila Jovovich Monster Hunter movie coming out. Don't know if you've seen that.
Dear God.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
God,
just as awful.
Have you seen the synopsis for that damn thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the most
so
predictable
dumb.
movie synopsis. It's like the monsters come to New York because, of course, they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Mixing current day events with. All right. Anyway, the less said about that.
Then you don't have to fully make a whole new fantasy world. You just film in a city.
Yeah, absolutely. Just cut down the cost of everything. Dear God. All right. Well, anyway, before we run into the news today, we wanted to just do a very, very quick wraparound back to our major topic of last week because we had some additional stuff that sort of came out after we finished talking about our top 10 list of most influential games, which Matt unfortunately wasn't there to join us with, but he gets to berate us now. But yeah, Christian, you've got something that you wanted to share. So
yes. So we got an email from a friend of the show, Jason. And he had some awesome feedback and some additional like thoughts and ideas on what he'd do in his top 10 influential games lists. And like one of the things he said is he had 3 games which he couldn't believe we missed, which were Half-Life, Warcraft 3, and World of Warcraft. And what was especially funny is 2 of those games, Luke and I had independently started kicking ourselves for missing anyway. So, like I know, Luke, you were saying World of Warcraft you think should have been on there.
The morning after, I literally sent you a message saying, I cannot believe we didn't add WoW. What the hell were we thinking?
And I strongly feel Half-Life should be on there too. Warcraft 3, I don't know. I don't know so much about, but Half-Life and World of Warcraft, I really think should have been on there.
Yeah.
But he like other games like Civilization, like Sid Meier's Civilization, that was a great thought by Jason. And then he had some games which were kind of more personal picks that he would like to see on there, like Chrono Trigger, like Legend of Zelda. I guess he meant the first one, maybe, and Pokemon, which I tried to argue for, but that got shot down. Understandably, I did agree with the arguments, but no, it was really cool to get that feedback from Jason. So yeah, if anybody else has any thoughts on any future topics, like our topic tonight, do send us an email. So it's always good.
I have to ask now. I haven't actually listened to the episode yet, but I have to ask. Was Halo Combat Evolved on your list?
It was discussed. Halo 2 was discussed, actually, more than Halo. But it didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So okay, I'm gonna say right now, Halo Combat Evolved defined first-person shooters on consoles. And I would absolutely argue it would be in that top 10 for that reason. Like, it defined like the control scheme and everything. Like every first-person shooter since has copied Halo Combat Evolved's control scheme, basically, just in terms of consoles. So yeah, it's one of those things though. Like I'm also super close to Halo Combat Evolved, but just in terms of, like that development end of things, I know how influential that game has been. But you would never be able to get all the games that were super influential in that top 10, and I could see a good argument for just that. You know, if it was only the control scheme, maybe, but I think first-person shooters have been so huge primarily because of Halo. That's my only input. There we go.
I think we both entered into the discussion, you know, with lofty goals of recognizing a whole bunch of influential games, and then realized as soon as we had to trim it down to 10, we were just like, oh dear God, this is like cutting arms and legs off. Yeah,
so like Gears of War came up for similar reasons, for basically defining how third-person action games were played.
Yeah.
We ended up going with Doom for like a first-person shooter representative. But yeah, no room for Halo, sadly.
It's like saying top 10 most required human organs and then cutting everything else out.
Exactly. How do you even do that? Anyway, if you think you can do a better job, everybody, I recommend you go back and listen to last week's episode 161, where we talk about all that stuff. And yeah, it's freaking hard, man. Come on.
Yeah, we'll revisit it in like a year's time or something with fresh eyes and see what we come up with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whole new fresh argument. And we'll see how Fortnite's doing at that point as well and whether that's worthy of discussion. So cool. All right. Well, anyway, that all aside, let's dig into some gaming news.
Now it's time to hear some gaming news. Time for some gaming news.
Sweet. All right. So, bit of, I don't know, sad/happy news to start off with this week. This is one that is very, very close to my heart. We got a surprise video from Nintendo during the week in the absence of any actual major planned direct, which odd that we haven't seen any scuttlebutt about one coming up yet, but, you know, there's still technically a few more days left in the month. We'll see. So, yeah, it was a development update on Metroid Prime 4, to which you may imagine my ears perked up and I went, whoo, interesting. Let's find out what's happening with this thing that we haven't heard about for 2 years since it was announced at E3. Unfortunately, the long and short of it is that it is not happening in the way that we hoped. It is not 2 years along in development. In fact, things have gone a bit awry, and they have restarted development from scratch and moved it over to a different studio. So now
they're getting help from Retro.
They are, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Retro are the original developers of the first Prime trilogy, which means that, you know, obviously it's good that they're involved once again, as opposed to, I think it was Bandai Namco that had picked up Metroid Prime 4 development instead. So, I mean, how much of the original Retro team that worked on those 3 games is still there, I guess, is up to be questioned, but
not a lot.
Yeah. I mean, a number of the significant people would still be involved if they would bring it back over. There must be a reason why they'd be looking at them. So, but look, as disappointing as all of this is, it actually does fill me with happiness and confidence about a couple of things. One thing in particular is that they care enough about this franchise to do it properly and not just release something like that's half-baked, which I think that, you know, good on Nintendo for actually having the guts to do that, because restarting a game's development after this amount of time, it must have been a really friggin' hard choice. And yeah, that's, you know, obviously a whole bunch of time and money and, you know, frustration with all the people involved. But, you know, recognizing when the thing's not going to, you know, the standards required and sort of, you know, putting the brakes on and starting again, I think that takes a lot of courage. So good on them. The second thing that I think is really remarkable is the way that they communicated it in a completely forthcoming and transparent way to all of the fans by releasing this video. And that is worthy of massive praise, in my opinion. I think that is an absolute stand-up thing to do, and freaking good on Nintendo for, you know, again, having the courage to actually get the message out and doing that. And to their credit, it seems like the general public at large has responded immensely positively as well, and given them props for actually going out and doing that. So, which is awesome.
I think it's really interesting comparing that to like the EA thing with the Star Wars cancellation recently, because like, when EA goes and does it, it's very clear that who they're speaking to aren't fans, they're speaking to investors, because the line after we've cancelled this game is that we're making something smaller and faster and cheaper so we can get it out quickly. And fans aren't going to be excited about that. They're going to be like, I don't want a small, fast, quick Star Wars game. I want a big fucking kick-ass one.
Yeah.
Whereas the way that Nintendo has really approached this is we're restarting development because it wasn't as good as we would want it to be, and we're going to make it awesome. And so they're not talking to their investors. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo's stock took like a tiny bit of a dip or something like that because of how they announced it. But they're going to see just like all these fans going, I'm upset that I'm not getting the game I want, but at the same time, you're going to make it really cool, so I can't complain, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just really, really interesting just how different the PR strategy is in that situation.
Yeah. Christian, what was that Miyamoto quote that really comes to mind at a time like this? It was...
it was like the rushed game is bad forever, a delayed game is like eventually good, or something.
That's right.
That sort of sentiment.
Yeah. That's bang on.
In this day and age with games as a service and DLC and updates and stuff, it's somewhat less relevant. But for Nintendo's style of game development, it's still very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Definitely.
I'm very happy to wait for a better Metroid game. And honestly, in the meantime, there's a few things that they could do, to keep the fans happy in the interim, such as they could bring Metroid Samus Returns to Switch instead of it just being on 3DS. That could be something that they could look at.
Metroid Prime Trilogy on Switch?
Absolutely. Yeah, if there's a port or a remake of those, that I think would keep a lot of people very, very happy, myself included. So yeah, I think there's definitely stuff they can do. And honestly, I think it makes sense for them to bring the Prime Trilogy across anyway to get people ready for the fourth entry if they're going to sort of have it continue on. So, because all three of those are GameCube games, I think, or one of them might be a Wii game.
Third was a Wii game.
Yeah. So it's been ages since I've played them. I'd love to do it again.
They released a bundled Metroid Prime Trilogy on Wii.
That's true, yeah. But the Wii store has just shut down as of this last week as well, so I don't think you can actually get that now. Yeah, which is a little awkward timing. But anyway, that's that, I guess. So
Yep. Well, in news of a pun that basically writes itself, Metro Exodus has left the Steam store for the Epic store.
Yep. That's the next one in quite a few. It's a bit of a mass exodus, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's an interesting situation because the way that Valve's kind of dealt with it, in my opinion, is a little bit petty, but they're also not wrong. It's literally there's that I forget what the subreddit's called, but it's like, well, you're not wrong, but you're an asshole or something like that. I'm like, and it's kind of how the whole statement from Valve kind of reads, which is that it's unfair on players that had pre-ordered the game that, it's not going to be on that platform anymore, but it will get supported on Steam's platform. But the whole thing just kind of reeks a little bit of, I genuinely get the impression that Valve is really worried about the fact that all these big titles are now departing their platform for the Epic Store.
They friggin' should be.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting because, like, there's a couple of people that I've heard that have been like, oh, well, exclusives to platforms on PCs is something totally new, and so what Epic is doing is a total dick move. But I would turn around and say, well, is Blizzard having their own launcher for Overwatch and everything? It's a dick move in itself, right? Like, I don't think that what they're doing is a bad thing. They're giving publishers and especially indies like a better option than what Valve is giving them. Valve has a ton of money that they could easily be throwing at this problem as well, just as much to fight against Epic. But right now, it really feels like they're on the back foot here. Like, they're just getting constantly taken off guard by, Epic just suddenly being like, yep, we've got this game now too. It's really interesting. It's a super fascinating situation. I think it's going to be a really, really good thing that Valve's going to have competition, because I do think that they're going to have to find their feet at some stage and start pushing back against Epic somehow to regain some ground. And it'll be interesting to see what exactly that is.
I think it's got to be changing their revenue split. Surely that's the thing that's going to really matter.
I think like that's one thing they can do, certainly, but I think it'd be more interesting if, imagine if the news came out next week, right, that Valve has signed some exclusivity deal, not just with, like, we were talking about this, about, EA goes to Valve and says, hey, we'll put all of our games back on Steam and we'll shut down Origin and we won't have any of our games on the Epic Store if you give us 100% split on our sales, right? And imagine that announcement next week. That would be super fascinating. Like, but Valve needs to make those deals. They need to start fighting back if they want to do anything really here. I do think, revenue split's a good thing for developers, absolutely, but they need to be doing more than that. They need to be doing something interesting and special because, Epic is taking a lot of news lately just by being like, yeah, this is the thing that we're getting on a platform now that you can't get anywhere else, and that's huge.
The interesting thing is
I don't like this personally, the Metro thing specifically. I don't like how it's only 3 weeks before the game comes out.
Oh, yes,
and
I totally agree.
And like, they've had to pull, well, like the dummy boxes on shelves have Steam on them still, and I was even reading that THQ Nordic didn't know it was going to happen. It was done entirely by Koch Media, their like parent company, and like the actual devs themselves didn't have any part of it. And yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I think that I get the argument of like other publishers have their own launchers, but Blizzard isn't like nabbing other games to put on. Like, they have Activision Blizzard games on there, but they're not getting like exclusivity deals for like third-party games.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what more Epic is trying to do. Epic is trying to create like a platform competition closer to like consoles, where it's like us versus them. Whereas I think that Bethesda and Blizzard and Origin, it's more like their own stuff that they're curating. So I think it is a little different, but
I think there's a fuzzy line there, because like Destiny's on the Blizzard launcher, right? And that's not really a first party title. It's published by them, by Activision, but and then Origin has got a lot of indie exclusives on there that you can't get on Steam. Like, it exists, but I 100% agree that the timing is really fucked up. Like, to come out 3 weeks before launch and say this is now an exclusive over here, like, that's really bad press for the development studio, and you know, it does not look good for them. That if this was a situation where Metro Exodus was a year away and they were now announcing that they're going to be an Epic Store exclusive, we wouldn't be having the same discussion.
No.
It would basically be like, this is really cool, like, Epic's making big moves, but instead there is that's kind of a dick move edge to it, you know?
I think people are really eager to be like to support the Epic Game Store, because it's Valve is this like basically this monopoly and they need competition, that sort of stuff. But I personally think it's letting the Epic Game Store get away with a little too much, because people too eager. And like, I know there's also been like, I know the store's new, Epic Game Store is new, but there's some basic features I think which are missing. Like, no games have controller support on Epic Game Store yet.
Yeah.
You can't even take screenshots. There's no discussion forums. There's no cloud saving, and there's a lot of that basic stuff, I think, which I actually think is quite basic, that they should have already.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm sure they'll invest in a lot of it, and it'll just get added over time. But yeah, they're at a deficit with a lot of those features at the moment. I think the thing is that we are probably still in the minority as far as the group that sees the long-term benefit of competition in the marketplace. I think there's still a lot of people out there that will just gravitate towards whatever's easiest and most convenient for them, which is having all their games in one place. So they really need to think about ways to give a what's in it for me sort of angle to those moves. In this case, you know, it was interesting. There was a huge sales spike on Steam when this first got announced, because there was actually a number of hours between when it got announced and when they actually removed the ability to pre-order the game off of Steam. So people who realized that, because they also said that pre-orders on Steam would still be honored, and those people would still be able to launch and play the game from Steam as long as they'd pre-ordered it there. There was a big inflood of people pre-ordering on Steam while they still could, before they closed it off, and then it moved over. So yeah, that was interesting. But since moving to the Epic Store, it's actually dropped in price too. Like, the revenue split has actually had a positive impact on the customer experience in this case, because it's gone from $59 US down to 50. So, you know, it's a decent saving.
Hasn't changed for us though.
No, not for us, because we got screwed and everything. So yeah, but yeah.
We also haven't mentioned, importantly, it's only for a year. It's a 1 year exclusivity deal. Then it's coming back to Steam. So
which that is new to PC. Like timed exclusives are kind of a new thing in terms of publishing on PC. You are not wrong there.
Definitely, yeah. So I don't know. You know, this will keep evolving. I suspect this will not be the last we've heard of Epic this year. That's for freaking sure. So
absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of interesting changes to existing platforms, just a very, very quick bit of Fortnite news. It's the game that we often avoid because it's just so firmly entrenched in the zeitgeist at the moment that we don't feel like we need to cover it. But one interesting change that was made during the week is Epic have mentioned that they're actually going to be ending the practice of including blind loot boxes in Fortnite, but only in the Save the World mode. So in the single player, well, I shouldn't say single player because you can actually play as a group, the non-battle royale version of the game, which doesn't exist on Nintendo Switch, sadly, it's on the other platforms. So when you're basically, versing hordes of zombies, trying to build your base, that sort of thing, there are blind loot boxes in that version of the game to sort of add cosmetics and different items, which, you know, it falls into that whole argument about predatory practices in games, you know, as a service and, you know, blind loot boxes, gambling, yada, yada, yada. They've taken the step and removed them. So interesting to see if that attitude will kick on into other features of the Battle Royale game. But it's made a few headlines this week because, you know, Epic are in this position now where they can afford to, you know, sacrifice some of their things like that would otherwise be making them revenue for the sake of maintaining good PR. So, yeah, it was an interesting one. What do you guys think about that?
It is important to mention there that it's only one loot box. So they're having one X-ray called the X-ray llama, and it refreshes every day. So there are still blind loot boxes in the game, but there's a rotating visible one that you can purchase.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's just giving you a bit more transparency in that one case if you don't want to sort of. Yeah. I mean, some people like the random thing. I guess there's no reason to take it away from them as long as there's another option. But no, I mean, I kind of get it. It makes sense.
I think that Fortnite making that move is a really big deal. Like it's not stopping the blind loot boxes being in the game or anything like that, but it kind of sets a tone for the rest of the industry when the big game that's making a lot of money from their blind loot boxes actually decides to back down on them a little bit. So hopefully that's a trend that we see continuing, because a lot of loot boxes are just really, really shitty practices. There's a lot of them that I haven't got issues with, but it's one of those things where I think a lot of game developers agree we shouldn't be doing it. So
yep, agreed. All right, so a little bit of Assassin's Creed news. It popped up during the week that Assassin's Creed Odyssey has been nominated for the first ever GLAAD, spelled G-L-A-A-D, Media Award for video games. And this is a particular sort of set of awards that honors a lot of sort of things that have been used to raise awareness of LGBTQ sort of issues in video games. A lot of sort of diversity and inclusivity and those sorts of themes. And Assassin's Creed Odyssey has had a big amount of positive press in that regard due to some of the choices they've made about the character development, the fact that Alexios and is it Cassandra? Yeah, Cassandra, are able to, pursue same-sex relationships in the game and, fairly gender fluid with the way they approach the narrative and that kind of stuff, which, has been a real positive point for a lot of people. But it's interesting that it's just been nominated for this literally a week after a really controversial new chapter got added to the game in form of DLC, which actually does kind of force the characters into a position where they are required to make a fairly lateral choice around character relationships, and that copped a whole bunch of flack. So they have basically tried to backstep that a bit, and Ubisoft are actually going to be making some change to the dialogue and the choices involved in that DLC, and capitalize on it a bit further with the next one that they add to make it clear that you still have quite a bit of agency in those sorts of areas. But yeah, it's good in a way that the game has been recognized for the efforts that it's taken, but it's bad in a way that this has kind of come at the time where they've actually kind of fucked up a bit and stepped 2 steps back. So
yeah. The discussion that I was seeing on Twitter that was really interesting comes back again to the flaws with a lot of these awards, because if you look at the nominees for the GLAAD Awards, it's the Elder Scrolls Online Somerset, it's Guild Wars 2 Path of Fire, it's Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, The Sims Mobile, and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And it's like, they're all fairly big AAA games. Why does that not include indies? Because if you want to find games that are all about LGBTQ representation and inclusion, that's where you find most of it. Because absolutely, quite frankly, the AAAs are lagging behind. So why are the GLAAD Awards only about AAAs? Like what is their marking method here that they're basically saying, oh, the game needs to have had millions of dollars sunk into it before we actually will even consider it a nominee? So I find that really interesting. And again, like, one of those flaws with those awards, like the Assassin's Creed Odyssey thing, I can see what the writers were trying to do. Like, there is a justification there, but it's a shitty one. But why, to me, like, the fuck up here, the bigger fuck up is why the GLAAD Media Awards don't include indies. Like, that's the big one here. Why don't they have an indie category if in that case? Like, it's very, very strange. I find that really weird.
I haven't really read much about this award ceremony or anything, but might there be something about wanting to put a focus or reward kind of industry leaders, I guess you could call them, or like where more of the money is, to try and push industry changes from the sort of top, like, more expensive level? Like, the indies are there, but they're not having maybe as much influence on the AAA games, and that's where more of the money is.
I think influence is the key word, because a lot of award sort of organizations are very commercial sort of based in their background, and it is about the impact and the influence that they can create in the industry. I mean, in case, for anyone listening who is wondering, GLAAD stands for the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, and it's specifically an American sort of non-government media monitoring organization that's been founded by LGBT people in the media. And, their goal is to basically try and further that cause. And they're going to do that through, recognizing and working with the agencies that are best able to enact that change. So, while it is representative of their values to sort of recognize things that are done with indie games, they're actually going to be furthering their cause by looking at the big players in the industry and getting them involved.
Yeah, because these big players are players that traditionally haven't been touching these issues. Whereas I think like with indies, a lot of the indie games sort of focus on these issues. They're made by these diverse people, and it's not so much like they're including one of these themes in a bigger game. A lot of the indies are kind of focused on that theme, whereas when you have Assassin's Creed, which is Assassin's Creed, and then it has inclusivity in it as like one small part of it, I think maybe that's a different ballpark.
Yeah,
I do agree. I could see it being like, we've chosen these games because they have a very broad audience, and so you bring some sort of theme in there about LGBTQ representation, and that's going to reach a wider audience than a game that's just about that thing. Like Assassin's Creed isn't just about having gay relationships. So I can definitely see that. But I still do think it's a missed opportunity.
A category at least would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, a category would be good.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about something a little sort of technical. There's a really awesome machine learning AI called DeepMind that is made by it's a subsidiary company of Alphabet, who are themselves the parent company of Google. And previously, this DeepMind AI has like defeated human opponents in games like Go and chess and shogi, which is like Japanese chess. And recently, they pitted DeepMind up against two StarCraft 2 pros, which was a kind of another step up in a lot of ways, because StarCraft 2 there's so many more variables at play than a kind of more structured game like chess.
Yeah.
And the AI managed to defeat these pros 10-1, which was, I think, pretty interesting. And so one of the key things here is that DeepMind is a machine learning AI. It's not an expert system. So like a lot of people might be familiar with like Deep Blue from the 80s, which was like an expert system AI that IBM made, which defeated like chess grandmasters. But that was a system where it's programmed with the rules of chess, and it's programmed with every conceivable chess move and chess strategy, and it knows ahead of time what the best way to respond to every situation is. Whereas machine learning is like an organic approach where it iterates upon attempts at solving a problem and learns itself how to improve. So they'll spend a number of days with DeepMind competing against itself, or like reviewing records of other games and like interpreting, how other paths may have gone. And so so it's learning from a starting point of how to get better at the game rather than being told what the best way to play is. That's what makes it super cool. But there were some restrictions on it. So it had to play Protoss, and it had to play a particular map, and it did have some advantages. Like being AI, didn't have to focus in on one area of the map. It had a full view of the map. So there is some caveats that make it gave it some like advantages, but still, I think, really cool.
It's incredibly interesting how those AI work, and like there's some really interesting articles out there about how they actually learned to beat grandmasters and everything, and how many iterations they go through playing against themselves and trying to beat the previous version by tweaking their strategies in little ways. And if the new version beats the old one, then the old one gets erased and the new one takes its place before fighting up against hundreds of more copies that are all trying new and tweaked little strategies. It's super interesting. Like, this AI is so fascinating to me.
No matter which way you slice it, it is all Skynet to me.
I love too that a lot of the human opponents have in these games have described the moves that DeepMind makes as like almost alien in how it approaches these games, and it will like I remember with when it was playing Go and it was defeating these human opponents, and the human opponents were saying it felt like playing an alien, like they couldn't understand the moves that it was making, but they were somehow superior to everything they'd ever known about the game, and it's just really weird.
I mean, like, if you go online, there's some amazingly funny and fascinating stuff about machine learning out there that I've read up on, because it's just a super fascinating idea to me. But like you tell an AI, here's a human body, make it move most efficiently, and it'll be, like after hundreds of iterations that you have this human body that's repeatedly flopping on its face rather than using its legs to walk. It's like, why the hell did you end up with this result? Like, given everything that we told you about how the human body works, why is this the most effective one? And sure enough, it is actually faster, apparently, for a human to move by thrusting their face into the floor. But like, that's just how they work. And it makes total sense then that players would be just like completely weirded out by its alien moves, because everything that makes sense to us is completely different for this artificial intelligence. It's one of those things where it's really interesting that we've created something that we can't understand that well in its motivations. Like, that's really neat to me and terrifying. Like, as you say, Skynet.
Yup. Abso-freaking-lutely.
And in last piece of news for the week, so Rami Ismail has launched Gamedev.world, which is basically an online game dev conference. Now, Rami has run events at GDC every year where he gets together a whole bunch of game developers from around the world to basically speak at the Game Developers Conference. And I think it was the last year or two that since a certain president has gotten into the office of the United States, a lot of game developers that would typically turn up to the Game Developers Conference haven't been able to get in. And I think it was literally last year that Rami was talking about the fact that he went through something like 20 different speakers that were all told that they weren't allowed to enter the United States. And so Gamedev.world is basically this online event where they're translating it into something like 30 different languages. I think they have something like 20 speakers over the course of 2 days, if I remember rightly. Mm-hmm. And they're like from so many big AAA companies and awesome indies and everything. And it's super, super cool because the Game Developers Conference, as good as it is, it's also prohibitively expensive to get into. And it's in a country that is securing its borders in a really toxic way that could easily have you fly all the way over there and then you get turned around because of your skin color, like, or your place of birth. Like, this is just a super positive thing. Like, it's really awesome that we're kind of moving towards, I hope, a future where we're going to see a lot more of these sort of game development conference style events online instead of taking place in a place like San Francisco, which is just ridiculously expensive to get to, especially if you're from Australia.
Yeah.
And two, just an expensive place to be in.
Absolutely. They had a really good demonstration of how that impacts it at that event last year, where I can't remember if it was Rami or someone else. They actually, I was hearing about this after the fact, they had a huge world map that they put up and got everybody who was attending to actually plot out where they were from. And then they sort of brought that up later and said, look at how diverse, our range of developers actually coming to this conference is. And Rami sort of, put forward that, no, this isn't, the diversity of game developers around the world. This is just the diversity of game developers who have actually been able to make it to this event because of the location or the cost involved. The actual spread of developers all around the world is vastly different to this. This is only a very small segment of it. So this will be a very good way to illustrate that, I think, and I love it. I think it's great.
It's such a good move. Like, I really admire a lot of stuff that Rami's done, and this is just another one of those things where it's like, it's such a super good idea. I really hope it goes down well, and like, if he can start getting funding for doing that, and it can become a 5-day event in the way that GDC is, like, but there will always be a place for GDC in terms of making those professional contacts and everything. But in terms of learning, like, you can easily run a conference online. Like, we're getting to that point now where internet speeds are good enough that you can watch it online and be just as good as being there in person. So.
And I think it's a great tool for people who are looking at getting involved in game development too, but haven't sort of, taken the step yet, taken the plunge. Because, they would never shell out the money to go to GDC unless they, had a sufficient surplus to spare. If they hadn't actually sort of, crossed the line and become a fully fledged dev yet. But this way, at least it's a hell of a lot more accessible to people who are considering doing it. So it's a really good thing.
I mean, even like, somebody living out in Whoop Whoop is going to be able to actually go and say, hey, I want to learn how to make games and everything and be able to watch this event. Like, that's really, really important. They still are in Australia, and there's a lot of game devs in Australia, but if they live out in the middle of nowhere and it takes them hours to get out to a city to go to an hour-long game dev meetup, like, this is a super valuable thing for them.
Yep, big fan. Love it, love it, love it. All right. Okay, so that is all for the news tonight. Now, we're going to kick into a slightly lighter main topic for tonight because we've obviously had quite a bit of gaming and news stuff to cover. So just a little one we wanted to chat about because this is current relevance based on a few of the things that have happened recently, and something we'd like to talk about regardless. I'm just going to have a little chat about game demos. So we've had a couple of high-profile ones lately that have been good and bad in different ways. But yeah, wanted to sort of just pose to you, a bit of a chat about the best way to actually have a game demonstrated ahead of release. Even in some cases after release, I guess, if you're still sort of looking to onboard new players. So what kind of factors make for a good game demo? And let's chat through some examples of where we've seen some of those things used to good effect or, the complete opposite. So now, Matt, I think it's probably prudent to sort of get you involved in this one first, because given that you've worked in a studio environment and have no doubt actually spoken about the logistics and careful considerations behind demoing games, what sort of stuff do you think springs to mind when it comes to crafting a good game demo? What would you think?
You have to put your best foot forward first. Mm-hmm. Like the moment that you get into the game, you want to be seeing the coolest, most fun stuff in the game to see, so that people are inspired to go out there and buy it. And I think the opposite is true for making a really bad game demo. Like, I've heard really good things at Ashen, but I believe when we were talking about our PAX trip, when we were doing that episode a few months back, I had mentioned that when I played the Ashen demo, I was there for 20 minutes, and at least probably 15 to 18 minutes of those were just in the opening cutscene.
Yeah. And
I couldn't play anything. I was just standing there watching this thing that was incredibly boring. And I'm sure that if I was sitting at home and watching that cutscene, it wouldn't be such an issue. But when you're playing a demo, you don't want to be sitting there and being like, okay, well, this is a 30-minute demo, and I've just spent 20 watching a cutscene, right? Like, I think that, no matter what, the demo needs to put its best foot forward first. So if we were to use the dark room as a point of reference, then maybe not starting the player at the very beginning is a good idea. If we were to make a demo of that, maybe we start them at a point where we think the funniest jokes are, so that they can get some of those really big laughs and they go and say, man, I want to see some more of that. And they go out and buy the game so they can have that experience. And it's gonna ramp up from the start before it gets to those super funny jokes, because we've shown them a snippet of our best stuff. But yeah, like I think that's where from everything I've heard about the Resident Evil 2 demo, it really, really succeeded at doing that, at highlighting the most fun parts of what they were doing. As you've mentioned with Anthem, though, walking around inside of the social space and it feeling like molasses is probably not a good thing to put in your demo.
No. So what we're saying is good demos, lots of action, check, infinite loads, cross.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds like a good summary. What do you think, Christian? What's a good demo for you?
I wanted to take a slightly different approach, which is which games and where you should find demos. Mm-hmm. So the most interesting thing for me are demos for games that I don't even know exist. And I think that is such I want game demos to be discovering rather than previewing in a sense. So many demos these days are just getting your hands on a game that you already know you want to play early. And my personal taste, I'm just not interested in that. I can't really think of any example of a game beta that I've played, or a preview build or something like that. I'm not really interested in it. If there's a game that I know I want to play, I'm just going to wait till it comes out.
Mm.
When I think about the demos that I've had the most fun with, it's been stuff that I didn't know existed, or someone just sort of recommended to me, or it was on like the Steam like front page or something like that. Mostly, honestly, from when I was a kid, really. Like, I don't play many demos these days, but back when I had like the PlayStation 1 demo disc, or there was this old Windows 95 demo disc that had like MechWarrior 2 and Doom 95 and a bunch of stuff on it.
Yeah.
And that's when I had the most fun with demos.
Well, it used to be a huge culture around sort of print publications as well. Like gaming magazines would always have demo discs in every issue.
Yeah.
So
I noted the same thing.
Yeah, I like demos to be introducing new things to me rather than giving me early access to stuff. But when it comes to getting early access to games with hands-on, I totally agree with Matt. Like, it needs to be a vertical slice of the game, like just the key features and like features of the game, and I don't like it when it's just the start of the game.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lot of demos are just the first 15 minutes or whatever of the game, and then when you eventually get it, you have to replay that same section over again. And that can feel like a slog. Some games are awesome, and they'll actually have unique content in demos. Like Bravely Default was one where the demo was actually additional content, and when you completed it, you could load your save into the main game. So there've been a couple of other examples like that I can think of, where it's been like extra side content or something that isn't just a small part of the game. It's like uniquely crafted for the demo, and that's really cool when that can happen.
I've just come up with a really good example to following that exact thing that you just mentioned, where you have cool side content that you can load into the main game. Do you guys remember when they released the short demo for Pokemon Sun and Moon prior to launch? When that came out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same thing.
That was a spot-on sort of representation of that, because you could actually sort of go through like a side area that wasn't exactly the same as what appeared in the main game, capture a few Pokemon and pick up a few items and stuff, and as a bonus, you could actually import the items and Pokemon you caught into the main game, and there was like a special cosmetic version of Pikachu, I think, that came with that you're able to get if you'd completed the demo. So that was a spot-on, awesome way to do it, I thought. That's a really good example.
Yeah. Unique experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Night in the Woods, after their Kickstarter, they released a little standalone thing that was completely free, that it was made in the engine and everything, and showed off how they were going to do the animations and how they were going to do dialogue and characters and everything like that. But it was a completely standalone story, so you weren't being spoiled on anything that was going to take place in the actual main game. And in a lot of ways, the stuff from that actually informed a lot of the things that you would end up learning about in the actual main game. So it was supplementary material that was just as valuable to play as the main game was. But they never marketed that as a demo. But I think it's a really excellent example of a good way to do a demo. Like, it gets you excited about playing the main game. Like, this is like I'm not going to experience when I play the main game. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deltarune's another recent example too, where it's like this tiny little preview build of a new like project from Toby Fox, and it seems that it is indicating a larger sequel or spin-off game.
Yeah.
But Deltarune itself is like this unique packaged thing.
Yeah.
I think that we can't not talk about old school demo discs and everything. Like, we mentioned it briefly, because like when I was a kid, I loved getting those demo discs, and I would play the shit out of, like, I remember 2 games that I always wanted to play, and only one of them I ended up actually playing and finishing when I grew up, but Neverhood and Medieval. I remember having those on a demo disc and just repeatedly playing them because they were so good. And then Neverhood, when I grew older, and I was like, oh man, I totally need to get this and play it. Like, I never got to play it when I was younger. It feels like there's a real missed opportunity. Like, that's the discovery thing you were talking about, right, Christian? Like, that whole thing of, this isn't a game I'm already a fan of and super excited about. This is a game that I've just discovered because it's here, and I wanted to find out what it is because it sounded like a cool thing. And we don't really get that discovery anymore. Like, we were talking about Rami earlier, but he's got a project. I can't remember what exactly it's called, but I think it would actually be a really good medium for running demos on, where at the moment they're doing like a game a day by a brand new creator. And if that game was basically a demo, like, that would actually be a really neat idea for being like, here's a showcase of all these indie games that are going to be coming up this year, and you're going to get a new demo every day. that encourages people to just pick up and play and discover something new. It's discovering something new just kind of as a standalone tiny little thing right now, but that's a really good medium for doing game demos that are old school like that, you know?
Yeah.
I love the comment that you made, Christian, about not wanting to spoil the experience of the main game by playing through a demo that sort of replicates some of the content. Like, to me, that makes me consider demos in a similar light to watching trailers for, movies that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Like, you're always scared about the trailer showing you too much, like giving away too many of the jokes, too many of the action set pieces and that kind of thing. And there are definitely some bad offenders when it comes to trailers in movies that have really, ruined the experience of seeing the film, like Terminator Salvation being a really good example I can remember because it gave away one of the major twists of the movie in the trailer itself. But ones that give away virtually nothing at all, like I think the new Avengers Endgame trailer is a good example of that, where they just give you a bit of a taste, but don't actually go into anything beyond what actually happens in the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
And just funnily enough, the Terminator 2 trailer was one of the best trailers of all time. Because in the Terminator 2 trailer, it made it look like Arnie was still the bad guy.
Ah, yes, good example. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's cool.
Like the trailers that take your expectations and flip them on their heads are really good. Like Star Wars and oh bloody hell, Avengers Infinity War did that as well, where it's like, oh man, we're going to get the Hulk back, and you see the Hulk in running along with everybody else, but you see the actual movie, no. Not there.
Yes.
Like taking that expectation and turning it on its head so that you're surprised when you go and actually see the real thing. Like that sort of content is super, super valuable. I wouldn't be surprised if like Deltarune was a really good example of that being something that happens when they go and release the full game. Like you might see the exact same content, but it turns out completely differently from how you played it when it was in Deltarune,
Yeah.
That'd be perfect for that particular that particular game, yeah.
One of the reasons why I think that the Resident Evil 2 remake one-shot demo works so well, though, is that technically the part that you play through is actually part of the main game. Like you're literally going through the Leon playthrough of the Raccoon City Police Department, sort of from the beginning of that bit. It's a really good place for the demo to start because it skips the beginning bit that has a lot of sort of cinematic cutscenes and build up to, the existence of zombies in the setting and that kind of thing. But the reason why I think the one-shot demo works so well is because of the fact that it's actually got that 30-minute timer. So that gives you a very different experience in that portion of the game than what you would have playing through it normally, because you've got that pressure, that time pressure to race through and try and beat the clock to complete the tasks you've got to complete. And it's very different to the kind of sort of atmospheric fear pressure that you'd feel from all the context leading up to that point that you don't get from the demo. So I like how it's a different experience with the same content in a clever way. And it's very sort of contained, and there is a definitive end to it if you manage to get through that section as well. So I appreciated the hell out of that. I thought it was great design.
I also think with Resident Evil 2, the demo was really clever because I think that's a game that some people did need convincing. They did need to showcase how different it was from a standard remake where they've just up-resed the game.
Yeah.
Like, especially coming off the heels of like remake when they re-released Resident Evil 1 Remake, which is a great game, but it is a much more traditional, polished and up-resed Resident Evil 1. So I think having a demo for Resident Evil 2 Remake, it was important to convince people, this isn't what you might be expecting. This is something bigger than that.
Case in point was me.
Yeah.
I was 100% not going to pick that game up until I played the demo. And then after I played the demo, there was no way in hell I was not going to. So,
yeah. I was not going to be super excited about Rage 2 until I played it at PAX.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it actually kind of makes me hope that they release that as a demo for people to play, because I bet there's a lot of other people out there that are like, man, Rage sucked. I'm not interested in Rage 2.
Yep.
Like, but I also, like, it occurs to me, we're talking about Deltarune. I think Deltarune is a really good example of a game demo that stands on its own without needing anything else to justify its existence. Fucking PT.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the best examples ever. Yeah.
Yeah, like PT is an amazing game demo that the game's not going to happen, but it's almost not sad in a way that it didn't happen, because PT is so fucking good just by itself. Like, there is so much in that demo that is unique and interesting, and like, grand scheme of things, you actually watch it and see the fact that it's just repeating content over and over again in different ways. Like, I imagine that's surprisingly quick to have built that. like that's an excellent example of just a fantastic demo that got people super hyped for a game that now is just never going to happen.
Well, don't worry, Matt, because you can re-experience that content now because someone's made it in Dreams.
Yeah, I saw that.
Crazy. Yeah, I wonder, actually, Dreams would be a really good platform for building a whole bunch of demo-style sort of contained experiences. I'd love to see that sort of thing get created. But yeah, no, I mean, I think one of the reasons why the Anthem demo, obviously technical issues aside, was going to have some problems is because it was definitely more of a beta test than an actual demo. Like, you could tell that a big part of the focus was testing server sort of load experience and, public feedback. And it was a bit of a marketing / PR move for them to try and get, some early impressions out before the game release. It wasn't a demo in the fact that it was sort of putting its best foot forward and showcasing some of the better aspects of the game. I think maybe it attempted to do that in a way, but its focus was nowhere near as singular on that as it should have been. And, I think it absolutely did the opposite of what they intended, which is that it gave people a very negative impression of the game, perhaps confirmed a few fears that people had about certain aspects of the play. And raised a whole bunch of questions about things that people hadn't even considered being issues beforehand now, which they're concerned about. So, you definitely don't want to have a demo that, puts people off your game because it's exposing things that, you otherwise would want to, keep a bit behind the curtain. That's, super bad move.
I have major problems with the whole beta as a demo thing because, it never goes well. Like, it has never gone well. The Fallout 76 beta had so many problems, and they promised people that they weren't going to do character wipes or anything like that, and people ended up hacking in items during the beta and were able to just keep on playing with them because it was a beta. Things were broken. It was expected that things were going to be broken, and they just got to keep that shit. I remember Destiny, when it had its beta, it just wasn't good. And, not only that, but it sets kind of unrealistic expectations about what a beta actually is. Like, these are basically, we're stress testing the servers. That's what it comes down to. And I kind of wish we could go back to that old school beta testing that we got with MMOs, where it was a closed beta. You had to sign up to be able to participate in it, and you were going in there with the expectation that things were going to be broken. But they've changed the marketing for betas now. Fallout 76 did at least, say it's the break it early, whatever. But when it comes out and it's just a few weeks out from the game's launch, that's not really an opportunity to fix anything. That's not really a beta test. It's a game demo. It's come and help us stress test the servers and play the game early, and you can keep your character and everything, and you'll be able to play it when it comes out. I really don't like that model. I think it's a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, and nowadays, the only closed betas are when you pay more money.
Yeah.
It's the only time you get access to a closed beta.
That's another problem with the Anthem situation as well, because the demo was available to people who had pre-ordered the game already. It's not the audience that you want to get on site. It's the ones that have already committed to purchasing the game. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that, we fairly well understand where we believe the line should be drawn between betas and demos, and they should be a distinctly different thing. But I think that the onus is equally on a lot of sort of game developers to make it clear when they're running these things as to which it is and what the intent of it is. And there's going to be a marketing / PR angle to almost all of them because, of course, it's an opportunity to showcase stuff. But I think there's a certain responsibility on the side of the consumer as well to not expect things beyond what is being put forward.
For sure.
I definitely wouldn't have expected demo style sort of experiences from the Fallout one because they were very clear about the beta test nature of it. But, from the Anthem demo, I absolutely expected a demo. I didn't expect a beta test. I thought that was a big fail in the way they ran that. So, yeah. I
would agree with you there. I think the Fallout 76 beta was actually not bad. It had its flaws and everything, but it succeeded at what it set out to do, which was the people that had already pre-ordered it kept around.
Yeah.
And they stuck around for after the game's release, only to find out then the game was a real broken mess.
Yeah. I think we can agree the beta wasn't the problem, the game was the problem.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Whereas it sounds like Anthem, there's a lot of underlying issues there with how that demo was run. And I think we can call it a demo because they didn't call it a beta. So for it to have been so broken kind of just exposes that perhaps they were much more confident about the state of their game than they should have been, which is worrying for release as well, That does not put their best foot forward.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I think that the Destiny beta was not too bad, but again, it wasn't really a beta. It was basically like, help us check our server architecture before the game comes out.
Yeah.
It's basically what it was.
So, Matt, do you think that you would apply a different brush to how demos should be built for live events as opposed to the sort of stuff that we've just been talking about? Like if you're going to demo a game at PAX or a similar convention or something like that, how would you approach that differently, do you think?
Okay, yeah, I would absolutely say yes. Build it differently from a standard demo because, like, so here's a little tidbit. I don't think I've ever actually talked about it on the podcast, but I used to make exhibits for SciTech.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're dealing with kids, you basically have like 30 seconds to get and hold their attention before they go running off and messing around with something else.
So for anybody who doesn't live in WA, this is a science and technology museum, sort of with a younger focus, located in Perth, WA. So, yep.
So basically, with PAX, you're dealing with a bunch of kids, and you've got to kind of account for the fact that, you know, an adult that has limited time over the course of this 2-3 day event or whatever, if they've got a 1 day ticket, they're gonna pick and choose what they're gonna play, and so you need to have a booth that looks really good and something that they can get into and get hooked on really quickly that makes them want to keep on playing and to experience more of it, which means that they're gonna buy it later on. And I think we've talked about it on the podcast before about games that demo really well but don't sell well. Like they're the kind of games that you only really want to play on the PAX show floor. There's a couple of them that are like, you know, your local multiplayer co-op games. Like totally play the shit out of that on the PAX show floor, but probably less interested in buying that at home because it's kind of a pain to get people into my house to gather around a TV and play this local co-op only multiplayer game with me. Yeah, so it's all in like getting people again into the best parts of the game really quickly and making them want to stay there. And there were a couple of games there that did that really, really well. Like the kind of puzzle game, the puzzle strategy action game. I can't remember what it was called. That I think I was playing it with you, Luke, on the gigantic tablet they had there. Or I might have stopped by and played that by myself. I can't remember the name of it. It's going to drive me insane. But that was a really good example of where I played a single level of that. And it was like at the midway point in the game. So the character had a decent amount of skills. And, you know, you could jump in there and play it. And then the next level that you played was a completely different character with a completely different set of skills and a completely different part of the game. And so you got a really good overview really quickly of what to expect from it. And it made you want to stick around and keep on playing to experience the 4 or 5 characters they set up for you. So, yeah like, you want to keep people around. You want to get them to your booth and keep them there when you're doing that in a local space.
Yeah. It's a while ago now, but I vaguely remember it, yeah. All right, well, any closing thoughts, guys? Any particular game demos that you can remember beyond the ones that we've talked about already? I think there's probably some pretty good examples there. PT being a very good one, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite are the Windows 95 discs that I mentioned, which was like this actual hub world where it was like made in the build engine, I think, and you would walk around this space station, and then there were like different like computer panels that you'd interact with, and that would take you into the demos for these different games.
Oh, I remember that. Holy moly, yeah.
I have such nostalgic memories for this Windows 95 demo. And then the PlayStation 1 disc, and it had like Destruction Derby and Wipeout, and it had this weird game called Loaded, which was like this top-down shooter, and I remember it having the first like dynamic lighting I'd seen in a game, and it was just awesome. And there was this other weird thing on the PlayStation disc, which was this dinosaur demo, and all it was just a T-Rex floating in black space, and you could press the buttons and the T-Rex would like run or it would roar. And it was just sort of showcasing 3D graphics. And I just have these weird memories of this T-Rex just running through space, and it was, I don't know, it's just weird nostalgic childhood stuff.
Actually, all of this has just made me realise that I still haven't played through the PlayStation VR Worlds demo disc yet. So
yeah,
probably do that at some point.
I always really liked it when a new Halo game would be on the way out and they'd include a demo for the multiplayer on some other game disc. And so you could go and boot up the Halo multiplayer and get a feel for what the new Halo game's multiplayer was going to be like. And I remember we actually got together at one point with I think it was ODST had like the Reach multiplayer demo or something like that.
Yeah.
And we all got together, would play the Reach multiplayer demo just like as a LAN party thing, and it was a ton of fun. Like it was super smart. It's in a game that you already have. I'm pretty sure they did something with one of the other Xbox games. Like Xbox used to do that a lot. But I really enjoyed that. It was a limited time thing, so you had to kind of get in there early. So it was a bit of a beta in a way. But yeah, that was before they were calling it a beta. So
Yeah. Good demos are cool. Bring them back. Bring back compilations of demos. I'd love to see more of that stuff.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I agree.
Cool. All right, well, thanks for the chat tonight, guys. It's been good to cover off a whole bunch of fun stuff. So, as per usual, if anyone listening would like to comment on anything we've chatted about tonight, you can hit us up at all the usual places. So, mail@partyloader.com, at Partyloader Show on Twitter, check us out on Facebook, and you can find links to all of our other media feeds of varying different sorts at our hub site at channelendgame.com. So, hop on there and check it out and read some of the recent articles and content and stuff that's gone up. So, there's lots of good stuff there. So yeah, gentlemen, anything you're looking forward to in the following week? What are you going to have another crack at Odyssey? Do you think, or is that going to be just baby steps?
I'm going to have another crack at it.
Yep, I'm definitely playing more Odyssey.
Me.
All right, interesting. Yeah. So should I get into it this week? Is that man? I'm still so.
Well, you finish Resident Evil first.
That's true. Okay, all right. I'll put that as my my reward after finishing Resident Evil 2. I'll crack into Origins. Odyssey.
I will make a promise.
Yeah.
I haven't actually played a Resident Evil game ever, so I'm going to fix that after I finish Odyssey, and I will go and get Resident Evil 2 because it sounds awesome.
Oh, okay. Do it in reverse order. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I think you'll really like it. I really do. In fact, I've got the physical copy, so if you want to borrow my disc, you're more than welcome to. That's an easy fix.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I'll keep that in mind.
Nice. I'll check out the next Anthem demo this weekend, and I'll report back next week and see if there's been any changes. But no promises.
Hopefully it's good.
Yeah.
Please let it be good.
I just want to get in and actually fly around and try some stuff. There's always, in the meantime, there's Warframe, so I'll be good either way. Anyway, thank you very much for listening tonight, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back again with more stuff to talk about next week, including our party game of the month, which is what, Christian? What are we chatting about next week?
It is Dominar. The Roman gladiator simulator.
Looking forward to that one. It's going to be a good chat. So we'll catch that in 7 days. But until then, thanks for listening. Good night.
Later, game.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.